for someone still learning and developing. That is what transformed this story from a simple Wimbledon recap into a fascinating debate that captured the attention of fans, analysts, former champions, and media outlets across the globe. Wimbledon has always been a tournament unlike any other. It is not just a place where champions are crowned or trophies are lifted. It is where every weakness is magnified under the brightest spotlight, where every mistake is replayed from multiple angles, and where every player is tested mentally as much as physically. The pressure of competing on the famous grass courts has exposed even the greatest champions throughout history, and for younger players, that pressure can feel almost overwhelming. On what seemed like an ordinary Monday afternoon in London, one of those defining moments unfolded in front of millions watching live on the BBC, as one of the greatest players ever to pick up a racket carefully examined every serve, every movement, and every decision made by Alex Eala. It was a moment that instantly became bigger than the match itself. To truly understand why this criticism resonated so strongly throughout the tennis community, it is important to understand what Alex Eala represented at this year's Wimbledon. She was not simply another seeded player hoping to make a respectable run through the draw. She had become one of the tournament's most compelling stories, carrying with her the hopes of an entire nation. At just 20 years old, Eala arrived in London as the tournament's 29th seed, representing the Philippines on one of the biggest stages in professional tennis. Every time she walked onto the grass courts of the All England Club, she carried not only her own ambitions but also the dreams of millions of Filipino fans who had followed her remarkable journey from promising junior champion to one of the brightest young stars in women's tennis. Grass was still the least familiar surface in her game, giving her only limited opportunities each season to adapt. Yet expectations continued to grow because of everything she had accomplished over the previous year. Her rise through the rankings had been nothing short of extraordinary. What once looked like the steady progression of a talented junior had rapidly transformed into one of the most exciting breakthrough stories on the WTA Tour. She had already captured international attention with her unforgettable run at the Miami Open, producing a series of stunning victories that announced her arrival among tennis's elite. Defeating accomplished stars such as Madison Keys and Iga Swiatek demonstrated that she possessed not only the talent but also the confidence to challenge the very best players in the world. Although her inspiring journey eventually ended with a semi-final defeat to Jessica Pegula, the tournament fundamentally changed how the tennis world viewed Alex Eala. She was no longer considered merely a promising prospect with future potential. She had become a legitimate contender capable of producing spectacular performances on the biggest stages against the sport's most established names. Even Martina Navratilova, whose legendary career and decades of experience have given her an exceptional eye for recognizing genuine talent, had spoken positively about the young Filipina before this controversy unfolded. Navratilova described Eala as a crafty player with impressive variety, praising her ability to use her left-handed game intelligently while mixing pace and angles in ways that could disrupt even experienced opponents. She admired Eala's composure under pressure, noting that she rarely panicked in difficult moments and displayed maturity beyond her years. Coming from one of the greatest champions in tennis history, those compliments carried enormous weight because Navratilova has never been known for offering praise lightly or without reason. Her respect suggested that Eala possessed the qualities necessary to become a serious force on the WTA Tour for many years to come. As a result, when Alex Eala stepped onto the grass courts of Wimbledon this season, the atmosphere surrounding her was entirely different from previous appearances. Expectations had evolved beyond simple optimism. Fans, commentators, and former players genuinely believed they were witnessing the emergence of the Philippines' next global sporting icon. Every match attracted growing interest, every performance generated headlines, and every point seemed to reinforce the belief that her breakthrough was no longer a distant possibility but an exciting reality unfolding in real time. That is precisely why the criticism that followed carried so much emotional weight. It was not simply about a serve or a single match. It challenged the narrative that had been building around one of tennis's brightest young stars and sparked a worldwide conversation about pressure, expectations, and the difficult path every future champion must navigate before reaching the very top, she had already made an unforgettable impression during the opening week of Wimbledon. Alex Eala began her campaign with a confident victory over Renata Zarazua, immediately showing the composure and confidence that had become trademarks of her rapid rise on the WTA Tour. She followed that performance with another impressive win against Maya Joint, a talented young player who had been generating plenty of attention herself after a breakthrough run earlier in the season. With every match, Eala looked increasingly comfortable under the bright lights of one of tennis's most prestigious tournaments. Each victory strengthened the belief that she was not simply enjoying a fortunate run of form but was steadily proving that she belonged among the sport's elite. Back home in the Philippines, excitement reached extraordinary levels as millions of fans stayed awake through the early hours of the morning, sacrificing sleep just to watch every rally, every winner, and every emotional celebration. Social media buzzed with support after every match, television coverage expanded, and headlines celebrated the young Filipina's remarkable achievements. Around the tennis world, commentators praised her fearless style of play, her remarkable maturity, and her willingness to challenge experienced opponents without hesitation. Many analysts described her as one of the brightest and most exciting young prospects in women's tennis, a player whose ceiling appeared to grow higher with every tournament she played. Even some of the biggest stars on tour were taking notice of her rapid ascent, recognizing that a new generation of talent was beginning to emerge. The momentum surrounding Alex Eala seemed unstoppable, and with each passing day, expectations continued to rise. However, professional tennis has always followed a brutally unforgiving rhythm. Success brings attention, but it also brings greater pressure, tougher opponents, and far more intense scrutiny. The higher a player climbs, the more every weakness is examined, every mistake is replayed, and every disappointing moment becomes front-page news. That reality was waiting for Eala in the next round, where she faced one of the toughest challenges of her young career. Standing across the net was Jasmine Paolini, the tournament's 14th seed and one of the most consistent competitors on the WTA Tour. Paolini had already built a reputation as a relentless fighter who thrived under pressure and possessed the experience to navigate the biggest stages with remarkable confidence. She was the type of opponent who rarely gave away free points, forcing rivals to earn every game through discipline, patience, and mental toughness. It was exactly the kind of test that separates rising prospects from established contenders. As match day arrived, anticipation reached another level. The spotlight was no longer focused solely on whether Alex Eala could win another match. Instead, the tennis world wanted to discover whether this 20-year-old rising star could take the next giant step in her remarkable journey. Could she transform from a promising young talent into a genuine title contender capable of challenging the world's best on a consistent basis? Or would Wimbledon deliver one of its harshest lessons once again, reminding everyone that extraordinary potential alone is never enough without flawless execution under the greatest pressure? The atmosphere surrounding the contest reflected those enormous expectations. Fans, analysts, and former champions watched closely, knowing that matches like these often define careers. Yet despite all the tactical discussions before the first ball was struck, almost nobody could have predicted what would become the dominant storyline afterward. It was not her powerful forehand that would dominate the headlines. It was not her athletic movement around the court, her competitive mindset, or even the final scoreline. Instead, attention became fixated on one specific element of her game that many casual fans rarely think about until something goes wrong: her serve. What had once seemed like an ordinary technical aspect of her game suddenly became the center of one of Wimbledon's most talked about debates. Every motion, every toss, every point of contact was analyzed in extraordinary detail as millions watched live. Then came the moment that changed everything. During the post-match analysis, one of the greatest champions in tennis history delivered a brutally honest assessment of Alex Eala's serving technique, breaking it down shot by shot before a worldwide audience. The comments instantly sparked debate across the tennis community. Some believed the criticism was fair and reflected the reality of competing at the highest level, while others argued that the analysis was unnecessarily harsh toward a young player still developing her game. What began as a technical discussion quickly evolved into something much bigger, dividing fans, commentators, and even fellow tennis legends. The conversation was no longer just about a serve. It became a debate about expectations, pressure, and the fine line between constructive criticism and excessive judgment. In the end, the discussion surrounding that single aspect of Alex Eala's game became almost as memorable as the tournament itself, proving once again that at Wimbledon, every shot can become a defining moment, and every opinion can shape the narrative of a rising star's career. The atmosphere around center court was electric as the long-awaited third-round clash finally arrived. Tennis fans had circled the match on their calendars for days, eager to see whether Alex Eala's remarkable Wimbledon journey would continue against one of the toughest competitors left in the draw. Standing across the net was Jasmine Paolini, a proven performer on the biggest stages and the tournament's 14th seed. With a place in the quarterfinals at stake, the pressure could not have been higher. From the very first point, it became clear that neither player was willing to give an inch. Every rally was fiercely contested, every service game demanded complete concentration, and every point carried enormous significance. It was the kind of match that tested not only technical ability but also mental resilience, physical endurance, and the courage to perform under the brightest spotlight in tennis. Paolini claimed the opening set 6-4 after capitalizing on a handful of crucial moments, but Eala refused to let the match slip away. Showing the fighting spirit that had become one of her defining qualities, the young Filipina responded with determination, raising the level of her game and battling back to capture the second set 6-4. Suddenly, center court was alive with anticipation as the match headed into a deciding third set. Both players understood that every point could determine who would move on and who would see their Wimbledon dream come to an end. Unfortunately for Eala, the deciding set gradually slipped beyond her reach. Paolini's experience began to show in the biggest moments, and despite Eala's relentless effort and refusal to surrender, the Italian held her nerve to close out the final set 6-3. With that, Alex Eala's inspiring Wimbledon campaign came to an emotional conclusion. It was a disappointing ending for a player who had fought so hard to reach that stage of the tournament, but few could have predicted that the biggest story from the match would have very little to do with the final score itself. By the following morning, headlines around the tennis world were focused not on Paolini's victory but on a remarkable moment that unfolded during the live BBC broadcast. Midway through the second set, with Eala leading 4-3 and momentum beginning to shift, the television coverage displayed a detailed graphic analyzing her serving patterns. At first glance, it looked like an ordinary piece of statistical analysis, the kind broadcasters regularly use to provide viewers with deeper tactical insight. But for Martina Navratilova, watching courtside as part of the BBC commentary team, those numbers immediately stood out for all the wrong reasons. According to the graphic, Eala had directed only 33% of her serves out wide on the advantage side, while just 37% of her serves on the deuce side had gone down the tee. To the average fan, those figures may not have seemed particularly significant, but to someone with Navratilova's extraordinary understanding of serving strategy, they painted a picture of a player failing to maximize one of the most important weapons in modern tennis. Her reaction was instant and unmistakable. Looking at the statistics in disbelief, the 9-time Wimbledon singles champion delivered a single word that immediately captured the attention of everyone watching. Crazy. It was not a casual observation or a mild criticism. It was a reaction filled with genuine surprise, reflecting how unexpected she found the numbers considering everything she already knew about Alex Eala's ability. For a legend who has spent decades studying the smallest tactical details of the game, the statistics simply did not make sense. Navratilova could not understand why a player with Eala's talent and natural left-handed advantages was using such predictable serving patterns at one of the most important moments of her career. She believed there was significantly more potential waiting to be unlocked. Rather than stopping with that initial reaction, Navratilova proceeded to explain exactly what she believed Eala needed to change. She broke down the mechanics of the serve in remarkable detail, arguing that Eala should be using wider angles to expose opponents' backhands more effectively while generating greater pronation through the ball to create additional pace, spin, and disguise. In Navratilova's view, the issue was not a lack of talent or physical ability. Quite the opposite. She repeatedly emphasized that Eala clearly possessed the athleticism, coordination, and technical foundation required to develop a far more dangerous serve. What frustrated her most was not what Eala could not do, but what she believed Eala was choosing not to do. The physical tools were already there. The potential was obvious. Yet during one of the biggest matches of her young career, Navratilova felt those weapons were not being used to their fullest advantage. That honest assessment, delivered live in front of millions of viewers, instantly became one of the defining moments of the tournament. What had begun as a routine tactical breakdown quickly evolved into a global conversation about coaching, player development, expectations, and whether one of tennis's brightest young stars was being judged too harshly or simply being held to the standard expected of future champions. In just a few minutes, the focus had shifted away from the final score and toward a single element of Alex Eala's game, proving once again that at Wimbledon, every detail is magnified, every opinion carries enormous weight, and every word spoken by a legend has the power to shape the narrative long after the final point has been played.